Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight we are doing an album ranking. We are doing our top 5 albums from the band Sweet. So we've got a panel discussion. We are ready to roll. We want to hear from you in the chat. So let's get started. Let's do it.
Grant is changing the world one track at a time on Grant's Rock Warehouse.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight, look at these beautiful faces. We have a whole new lineup tonight. We're giving Webb. Webb's been biting at the bullet. What's that word? Biting his fingers off? I don't know.
Chomp at the
chopping his fingers off to get on the show. And he is here tonight. And also we have Jay. Jay, what's your channel again? Louder, what is it?
Louder Than Life. But I don't really
Louder Than Life.
I don't have anything good on my channel.
You don't?
I'm working on that.
No.
You got to keep doing it. And of course, we have Ashley down. I don't know where he is located to me, but Ashley down here. We've seen Ashley. He's been on the Contrarians. He's a professional as well. So he's here. We're going to talk a little Sweet tonight. We're going to do our top 5 albums. So it's a mini ranking. Sweet have more albums than that, but we're going to do our top 5. So this panel knows what they're doing, I think. I've not been on here before. So we're going to give them a shot. Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. All right, gentlemen, how are you? Jay, Ashley, Webb, you guys, you good? You ready to go?
We're ready to go.
All right,
I'm
so
as
we're going to
ready
look.
as I'm going to be. I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
Okay, let's do it. All right, so we're looking at the UK albums. We're not looking at the US albums, which often are titled the same, but often have a different track listing. Because if we look at Desolation Boulevard here in the States, that really was a combination of the UK version of Desolation Boulevard and Sweet Fanny Adams. Tonight, we're just looking at those UK albums. We may mention it because if I was going to rank Desolation Boulevard as the US release, I probably would rank, I think it's a great record what they did, what they compiled, because they compiled the best from Sweet Fanny Adams. They've compiled the best in Desolation, and you get a great record. But we're going to look at these UK albums. So I'm thinking since we've got us 4, how do we want to do it? Let's go. We have to be done in an hour. Let's go 3, do 3, and then 2. And we'll just keep going around. And I'm going to go with how you appeared on the screen. I'm going to go with Jay, Ashley, Webb, and then myself. So going 3. Give me your 3 and then your 2. Jay, welcome to the show. Dazzle the panel with your picks. And start out with your number 5.
I didn't wear my Sunday best, but I'll do my best. Yeah, so my number 5 is Cut Above the Rest. Now this one here, it's a polarizing album, as is most of the trio records, but taking on its own, it's actually a much better album than I personally think than probably a lot of Sweet purists will say. This one here was released in '79, first album without Brian. This one only peaked at 151 on the U.S. charts. It actually had better showings than Austria and Sweden, which kind of surprised me. But this one had really ugly brown cover art in most parts of the world. Luckily, Norman Goodman would design artwork for the UK, US, Canada, and I think Japan, continuing the concepts of some of the other records that we'll talk about, I'm sure. But anyway, the highlights for me, Call Me, opening track. It's a little corny, but it's got it's almost got a Latin flair to it, which normally I wouldn't like. I don't really have an extensive library of Latin music, but...
Oh, come on, Jay. I know back there behind you, there's a ton of Latin.
Tons, yeah. But it's, it's hopelessly cheesy, but man, it's catchy. And I think it's Steve's best vocal on the record. And there's enough hooks to keep me entertained. Of course, then you also have Play All Night, which I think is the best song on the album. It has more of that classic crunch, the hooks that we expect from classic Sweet. The little refrain at the 2.5-minute mark reminds me a little of Fleetwood Mac's Tusk. I have no idea why I get that image in my head, but every time I hear it, I always think of the marching band and, the chanting. Yeah. but I have no idea why this one was not chosen as a single. To me, it's a no-brainer. It's excellent power pop that would have fit in nicely with a lot of what was happening on the charts at the time. You had Nick Gilder, you had The Knack, The Cars, Cheap Trick, Nick Lowe. They were all getting lots of airplay around that time. So yeah, that's a highlight for me. Big Apple Waltz, maybe a little sentimental, but I really love the homage to New York City, and it's got great anthemic melodic hooks in the chorus. iGames, I really love iGames. It's short, but it's got Mick Tucker on vocals, which is kind of a rarity in the Sweet catalog. And Mick's got an excellent voice. I have no idea why they didn't utilize him more. I think he's actually one of the better singers in the band, certainly better than Steve, which is no slight on Steve.
Well, Steve does most of the vocals at this point.
He does. And it's really an odd choice for him because I really think that the Andy and Mick do overall a better job on a lot of this material than some of the Steve songs. But and then I can't not mention Mother Earth.
Great song.
Yeah, I like it.
Sweet Goes Prague. I mean, who saw that coming? I mean, there were, we saw little shades of that in the instrumental breakdown of Love Is Like Oxygen, and they kind of mimic that a little bit in this song as well. But it's got lots of ELO-isms happening, and I'm a huge ELO fan, so that's a good thing for me. But yeah, I think it's an excellent song, maybe my second favorite song on the whole album. And then Hold Me would be another highlight for me. I know a lot of people probably don't really get off on this song. I know it doesn't get a lot of love, but I think it's actually really kind of a cool atmospheric ballad. And Sweet is one of those bands where their ballads have been hit and miss. There are some ballads that I'm like, I'm not so much in love with, but Hold Me, I think is tastefully done. And I think it's actually one of Andy's best vocals. So the other songs, Dorian Gray, Disco Phony, and Stay With Me, they're cool. They're kind of nondescript. Dorian Gray is probably the best of the three.
My favorite track on the album.
What's that?
That's my favorite track on the album.
That's your favorite track? I mean, it's got, I love the bounce.
Mick Tunger also sings that as well.
Yes, absolutely. And Mick sounds great there. And that's definitely a highlight for me of that song. It's got a power pop bounce to it that I really enjoy, which is something that Sweet did a lot of in those later years. And so that's cool. But, Disco Phony and Stay With Me, I don't know. I think they're maybe a little more on the generic side. But when you take this album on its own merits and you look at it just as, for the three guys that are left, they're all excellent singers, really, at the end of the day. Yeah. And I think that made all the difference in the world. Certainly, picking up after having lost such an iconic voice like Brian.
Yeah.
So that is my number 5. My number 4 would be Off the Record. This would be their final RCA album, their second self-produced album, and probably what most people would call the last of their hard rock albums.
Yes.
Lost Angels, very cool song. It sounds actually like it's something that could have been, there you go, yeah. It could have been lifted right off of the previous album. It's got those Moog synth leads and the pop sensibilities that are similar to like Lies in Your Eyes is probably a good example. And Midnight to Daylight, cool mid-paced rocker. It's got really great harmonies. Actually, I think probably some of the best harmonies on the entire album, really. And then Windy City, man. I mean,
yeah,
great track.
That song has a cool pounding rhythmic, and it definitely bears shades of Deep Purple's Woman.
Yes.
I think probably anyone that is familiar with Deep Purple immediately thinks that when they hear that song, and rightfully so. But I think it's one of Brian's best vocals on the entire album. And it's definitely the heaviest song. Another highlight would be Live for Today. It's actually my favorite track on the entire album. And I think it may even be in my top 5 of all the Sweet songs. It's got this punky energy. Brian just kills it. And when you think about the fact that Brian had, a serious throat injury just a couple years before, it's really kind of an accomplishment how well he did on this record. But I think it's a great album. She Give Me Lovin' would be another highlight.
Great track.
Yeah.
This one just comes out of the gates with kind of a set me free kind of vibe. Super high velocity. It's got great manic vocals from Brian, and that extended solo and breakdown that follows are some of the coolest moments on the album, I think, personally.
Mm-hmm.
And then Hard Times. It's a kind of a quirky song. It's got kind of a stomp to it, and some interesting time signature changes. But I think Brian sounds crazy on this one as well. And I love the extra reverb on the snares that Mick hits during those segues. I don't know. It's just little subtle things like that that really like separate that from some of the other songs on the album. Now, Fever of Love, Laura Lee, Funk It Up. I'd say Fever's probably the best of the bunch. But it's kind of got a dull shuffle beat that doesn't really do anything for me. Laura Lee, Brian sounds great. It's just, I think the song kind of feels half-baked, doesn't seem to really go anywhere. It's pretty enough, but and then of course there's Funk It Up. Dude, don't even get me started on that one. All I know is disco and the sweet just feels so wrong to me. All I know is whoever pushed for this song needs to be punched in the head. But here's the travesty for me. I don't know if y'all, I'm assuming probably at least some of you had the North American edition of this record. And it had a little track called Stairway to the Stars on it.
Yes.
This was on the US North American vinyl release. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think it's actually one of the overall best sweet songs in the entire catalog. I'm obsessed with it. I've loved it forever. And I think it's honestly maybe the best song on the record, if you want to call it that. But I don't know why they didn't include that, because I think it would have made a better album, and I probably would have ranked it higher were that song actually included on the record.
They included that as a bonus track. Webb, on that CD. What CD version is that?
It is it's the one that has that on there.
But it's a bonus track, right?
Yeah, it's a bonus track. It has like 7 bonus tracks, like remixes, and then
I think that's the one I've got. I think
that was released as a single in Australia.
Oh, was it really?
Yes.
How did it do?
Nah, not very well. Not very well.
It didn't do well, folks.
This album, it wasn't promoted very well over here in Australia as well. And also, Lost Angels was also a single released off it as well.
Right.
This is my favourite track on the album. But it was probably that didn't get as well as the other previous albums did.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And that's a shame. All right, well, my number 3 this is probably gonna ruffle some feathers, a controversial choice, but I'm going with, what's that?
Coco?
No, but I will say I have a lot of love for the
thought that's what it was going to be. Well, I don't have a problem with it. I don't think
he says give us a wink.
I don't think Martin's a big fan of that stuff.
No, actually, I'm gonna go with Water's Edge.
Oh,
I know a lot of people probably felt like that was the band's last gasp, and perhaps it was, but it was, I think, a super consistent record from top to bottom. While the songs may not be like the most mind-blowing thing you've ever heard, consistency wise, I think it's actually one of Sweet's more consistent albums. There's just an overall a power pop sheen that's happening with all these songs. And I think a lot of it, when I think back to 1980, I discovered the trio records. I had no idea that they even existed. I thought that when, Off the Record, or I'm sorry, Level Headed happened, that was the last of Sweet. I didn't hear anything else. So I didn't even know that they had continued on as a three-piece until I was in my local Airway, which is a reference for all you Midwesterners. Some of you might recognize that. I grew up in Indiana. So, but anyway, that would have been like in late 1980. I got it out of the cutout bins. Given that this album came out the same year, that's kind of a good sign that the album didn't do so hot. But anyway, that was my introduction to this other phase of Sweet. And so maybe I have a sentimental attachment to the record, but I love it. Getting in the Mood for Love. It's got a cool, insistent driving riff, great harmonies, great dual leads by Andy. Tell the Truth, definitely one of my all-time favorites on the record. It's got some ELO vibes, it's great dynamics and those killer staccato keyboards with the falsetto harmonies, very dramatic. Own Up, I think Own Up, which is another Mick Tucker lead, I think that one could have been a single. I don't really understand why it wasn't. I think it should have been. It's so catchy, lots of hooks, it's just a very fun power pop kind of track. Those choruses get stuck in your head. And then you've got Too Much Talking. If there's anything that would have topped Own Up, I think it would be this one. It has a darker feel, but I think that's what makes it so cool. It's kind of a breath of fresh air. And this one, incidentally, was written by their touring guitarist, Ray McReiner. I've never heard of the gentleman before, but dude, man, I mean, I think it's the best song on the record. The Leslie effect on Andy's voice is a really nice touch, gives it some atmosphere. And I think this one was another missed opportunity as a single, not too far removed from what was trending on radio in 1980. Other than that, you've got Thank You for Loving Me. There's kind of a light and shade going on there, kind of a darker verse with some really bright, cheerful choruses, which make for a cool contrast. At Midnight is total power pop. Could have been another single.
I love that one.
I think it's great. And then Water's Edge, the title track. It's one of the more serious, dramatic cuts, but maybe some people were put off by the fact that it wasn't that fun, poppy, sweet that they were accustomed to. Oh, there you go. Yeah. But
look at Ashley for the win.
It doesn't sound out of style with what was happening on radio at the time. Yeah. And I'm a fan of it. So,
all right, cool.
The other two songs, Hot Shot Gambler and Give the Lady Some Respect, they're not bad. They're likable enough. But it's mostly just, some boogie kind of chord progressions. Although I'll say Hot Shot Gambler kind of just goes into almost a Southern rock kind of vibe, which is kind of new to me for Sweet anyway. Mm-hmm. And then you have 60s Man, which I'm sorry, I'm not a fan. I was never a fan. I have no idea why that was chosen as a single. I think the performance of that single was a good indicator of why that was such a bad idea. So anyway, cool. Those are my three.
All right, kids, we got to keep this moving. Ashley, what's your three? We're never going to get through it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take a bit of a different approach to what you guys would do. And my number 5 is going to be Andy Scott Sweet, The Answer.
Holy crap, look at...
Oh.
Well, Ashley is contrarian for crying out loud, so I wouldn't... Of course, he's picking that. Contrarian. Look at you.
And this came out in 93. And if you guys are like the real traditional heavy metal Sweet, well, then you must hear this album. This is really good. What this album is, they done an album in 91 called A, and then it was remastered and reissued with 2 extra tracks, and they released it as The Answer. And you've got killer tracks on these tracks like X-Ray Specs, Marshall Stack, that's a good one, Red Tape, Do As I Say, which was released as a single. And they do a battle on here, When Friends Fall Out, which is quite good. They do a cover of the Australian band The Angels song, Am I Ever Going to See Your Face Again on here as well. Novo Rockstar, which is a bit of a throwaway track about paying out a couple of grand people and people in the media that go to every band and think they know everything when they don't. And you get the last version, you get two versions of Stand Up on here. You get like a bit of a rock tone, and then you get a harder rock version that's a bonus track, and the single version of Do As I Say. So for anyone that hasn't heard this album's a must. Very good indeed. Very good indeed.
But is it really sweet though? Just throwing it out there, because people are gonna say, "Well, that's not sweet." Yeah. No, Brian Conley, that isn't sweet.
No, I did ask Grant whether we're going to go to the original 4, and he said, "No, we can do whatever we want." So, okay, the answer it is. Okay, my number 4. Now, again, I'm going to go off track a little bit here, being in Australia as I am, and I'm going to go for the Sweet Singles album.
Oh.
Now, this album was only released in Australia and New Zealand, and this came out in 1975 to coincide with their Australian tour of the time. And what it basically is, it's all the hits from all the hit singles, plus the B-sides, which they are renowned for their heaviness. Like we've got tracks on here, we've got Man from Mecca and New York Connection, and we've also got the hits like Ballroom Blitz, Blockbuster, but we've got other tracks on here. We've got Burn on the Flame, Rock and Roll Disgrace, which are B-sides, and unfortunately, this album's never had a digital release, which is something I don't know.
Yeah, I've never seen that before.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
No.
It was a top 10 album in Australia, and also did very well in New Zealand. It was printed all the way up, and they stopped at about 79. And yeah, so if you see that in the wild, certainly pick it up.
The chances on me seeing it in the wild, Ashley, very slim.
Yeah.
You never know. You never know. And my third one is going to be Sweet Fanny Adams.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, starts off with Set Me Free. Now, you can't get off to a better start than that now, can you?
No.
No.
I agree. No.
That whole track will tear your face off.
It will.
It's just so intense. Anyway.
It will. Heartbreak Today, a great track. That's really good as well. No, You Don't's a good one. Yeah. Rebel Rouser. That is a great track. And we had the single from this album. As you see, this contains a hit, The Peppermint Twist. And this was a top 2 single here in Australia in 75.
Wow.
And Rebel Rouser was, in fact, the B-side of the Peppermint Twist single. Also contains the classic Sweet F.A., which is an absolute all-time classic. Very great track indeed. And then it contains the Steve Priest Restless, which I also think is a killer track as well. Didn't know that Steve sung that until many, many years later. And Into the Night's quite good. And then you've got the iffy track AC/DC, which is written by Chin Chapman, which is a bit of a throwaway track in the end. Joan Jett does a good version of it actually as well.
But it's great. It's great. It fits right into on the album.
It does. It does indeed.
Yeah.
It does indeed. So yeah, that's my first 3.
Sweet baby
Thank
Jesus. That's awesome. Sweet Fanny Adams that low though, Ashley. I can hardly wait to see what your top 2 are. All right. Cool. All right. Webb. Welcome to the show, of course. Let's hear your first 3.
Well, okay, I'm going to ask you guys.
Okay.
How about the album that was only released in like Germany, and I think it wasn't released in the UK? I'm talking about Identity Crisis.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't have it with me. It's back there, but
anybody have it?
Cool
show it.
Ashley's got it. Ashley's got every prop on the planet.
Well, you know what? I'm going with that with 5 because I'm doing it because I'm going to be contrarian. I had Cut Above the Rest as 5, and I listened to Identity Crisis today, and it hooked me. I don't know. I mean, it hooked me. It was recorded in 80 and 81, so it was kind of like right after Water's Edge. And I don't know, it's kind of like they're channeling like a new wave Cars kind of sound, like Candy O and all that kind of sound. I think the title track is cool. The second song, 2 to 1, has this really cool off-kilter beat that's kind of
that's
follow,
cool.
and a drummer like me just eats that crap up. And I wrote down it makes me wonder is cool. Hey Mama has a really cool riff. Kind of sounds like April Wine around 81 maybe. And I wrote Falling in Love has a cool guitar. I hear the Aaliyah. Okay, yes, of course. I hear Aaliyah by Donnie Iris riff in Falling in
Oh
Love.
yeah, I hear that too.
Yes. Okay, somebody can confirm it.
Yeah, I hear that.
And then I even wrote Strange Girl kind of has a Cheap Trick sound. I don't know. It's like they were doing the power pop kind of early 80s thing. And I know nobody bought this album. I mean, I don't know who bought the album. Ashley
It didn't do
has it,
anything. Ashley's the only one that bought it, as far as I know.
I mean, it wasn't even released. I mean, it was only released in like 2 countries.
Yeah.
It
But
was released.
I'm gonna be
The band,
contrarian.
the band didn't have a say in it. It was released as at the end of '81. The band took a break, and they had the album recorded, and they released it while they were on break.
Oh,
But
cool.
unfortunately, this isn't one of my favorites. To me, the production on it is terrible.
Well,
Production's
I heard it on
terrible
my
on it.
phone.
Yeah, what had happened? The record company when they made the record, they used the wrong mix of the album.
Okay.
Oh wow.
Maybe I heard a different mix. Is there a different?
That's-
I'm telling you, it hooked me in. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to go for it and just say it's my number five.
The songs are there, the heaviness is there. It's just the production, the way it went. To me, it was a bit of a.
Well,
bit of
damn
a
it,
down.
I'm putting it at 5. So
And damn it, Ashley, what version of the CD do you have? Is that the 70s version? What
I
is
have
that?
the repertoire. I have the
Yeah.
You have the
repertoire. one.
repertoire? Okay.
Yes.
okay, and then you know what? For 4, I've got Level Headed is my number 4,
Okay.
but I love, of course, Love Like Oxygen is awesome, and it was a number 8 hit. I like that Air on a tape loop, which is kind of they're very proggy on that. California Nights is pretty good. Fountain has a cool acoustic in it, and it has a prog tinge to it. And I wrote There you go. I wrote Strong Love was awful.
Yes.
Yeah, but I almost like Identity Crisis and Cut Above the Rest. And I don't know, but we're gonna put Level Headed at 4. I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna stick with
Okay.
my pick.
All right.
There's a
I
dirty
know-
version of Hot Love as well on that. I have a bootleg album of theirs, and it's got some other odd tracks. It's also got from Cut Above the Rest. It's also got Brian Connolly.
Yeah.
It's got Brian Connolly singing "Play All
Sing
Night"
on
on
my
it,
face.
which is really good night. But there's
Okay.
a bit of they changed the lyrics on that song, and it's a bit
Yeah.
dirty. So
Okay. And did this album chart? I mean, I couldn't find any sales
Well, it
information.
charted here in the States.
it charted
That's
in
right.
Australia.
You're talking about Level Headed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Level Headed.
it-
I don't
I think
know.
it was a
Did
bigger album here than it was in the UK.
but I still
think.
couldn't find if it went, how much
Well-
it sold. I
Well,
didn't-
let's
The
see what I can
last
find.
last charted album in Australia.
Well, dig up some info, Grant. See what you can find.
You keep talking. I will see what this charted. All right.
Okay. Okay, and for 3, I have Sweet Fanny Adams.
Yeah.
I think that was really where they perfected, or not perfected it yet, but they that hard rock, that sound, that unique sound of Sweet. I played Sweet for a lot of friends of mine, and some of them just don't get it. I don't know why. They like hard rock. They like good musicianship, but Sweet has that, the vocals, the multi-layers. Mick Tucker just kills me. I'm a drummer. I mean, I can listen to him play on anything.
He's
so
seriously
solid.
underrated for sure.
He's so solid.
very
He's
underrated.
explosive. He has these little signature, things that and the more I listened to him, I was like, okay, he's in my like top 20, 25 drummers. After doing this homework, I don't know, man, he might be top 10. He goes off the record and give us a wink and the Desolation Bull. I mean, and he's really coming into his own on Sweet Fanny Adams. And like, we've said before, Set Me Free, Sweet FA, No You Don't, Into the Night. Those are like definitive Sweet songs. And I just never get tired of it. I just think it's a great album. I would have given it like an 8 out of 10.
Hmm.
And I wrote that Restless was good. I think Ashley said that. Did Ashley say that? I like that song. I did not
Yes.
know that song.
Yep.
Because
Steve Priest sings it.
yeah, and Sweet Fanny Adams was not released in the US, right? It was just the UK.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And it went gold. So okay.
All right. So Sweet, Level Headed got to number 52 on the top 200 Billboard chart. Love is Like Oxygen got to number 8 on the
8,
Billboard Hot
right?
100. That was the
Yes.
last top 10 single Sweet ever had in the States. That was the end of the
Yeah.
line. So,
And that's the first song I heard by Sweet as a 9-year-old. Grant might have been a little older than that. But well, come on. 1970, I mean, yeah.
yeah.
So hearing that on the radio and hearing that riff,
Hmm.
I was like, what in the hell is this? And then, the drum fills when it kicks in, and then those vocals, it was, I'd never heard anything like that. And, it hooked me in, and then I felt like I didn't hear it for a while, and then, got back into it later. So love it. Anyway, so that was my top. That's 3, isn't it? Am I already done? I'm already done, right?
Ashley, is he done?
Yes,
Am I done?
he's
Okay,
done.
you're done.
You're
All right.
done.
Grant, you're supposed to
Excellent
know
work.
if I'm done.
You know what? I get on these shows and I can't keep track of what I'm doing.
You veg out because you do so many shows. You
Uh, I don't even know if I'm coming or I'm going. So, all right. My 3, I'm going to start off. Thank you, Webb, by the way.
yes, you're welcome.
All right. My number 5 is going to be Off the Record 1977. I think this is one of those records. It's often underrated. Mr. Martin Popoff, I think, really likes this record. I think his favorites Give Us a Wink, though. What Webb? Webb is pointing to himself.
I love Off the Record too. So
Okay.
I don't know.
So does Webb.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Fever of Love, punchy opener, funky rip, great vocals. Lost Angels was already mentioned. Great, melancholic kind of. Man, the chorus on that song is to kill for. The whole thing is great. Windy City, heavy. It's epic.
Yes.
Live for Today, very upbeat kind of anthem. Jay's already talked about it. The panel they're on fire, ladies and gentlemen. That's my number 5. My number 4, I'm going to go with, well, we just talked about it. I'm going to go with Level Headed. And like Webb said, that riff to Love is Like Oxygen, absolutely incredible. When I was a kid that came out, I couldn't stop playing it. I could see why it was a big hit. It's probably my favorite Sweet single.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit different. It is kind of proggy, but it's heavy.
Yeah.
Great
Did anything
production.
on the radio? Did anything on the radio sound like that? I mean, I don't
No,
think
nothing
the radio
sounded like it.
Well, now I know that the single version, the 7-inch edit on that,
Yeah.
cut a lot of that proggy stuff
It
out.
did. Cut a lot of it out.
But it's
Right,
still got the
so-
meat. It's still got the meat in
But
there.
that was the version
Yeah.
I was used to because that's the 45 I bought,
Right,
Mhm.
right.
And then when I heard that middle part later in life, I went, whoa, what is this witchcraft?
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a
I
proggy
know.
middle. I have
Same
the
here.
45.
Yeah.
And then the
But I thought it
disco
was
kind of
cool.
fade out.
Yeah.
The little disco-y groove.
Yeah.
But I think it's great. California Nights, kind of breezy, funky, evoking that West Coast. It's hard, words are hard, ladies and gentlemen. West Coast kind of vibe. Anthem number 1, Lady of the Lake, kind of a grand piece, tender emotions on here. It really hits me in my heart. But I like the whole record. I think it's great. Man, it's just one of those records that when I was a kid, or when I finally did get the album, I just love it. I know there's not as much Brian Conley on it, but I still think it's one of their great works. So that would be my number 4. My number 3, Scroll Grant. Oh, we're going to go with Martin Popoff's favorite record, Give Us a Wink, 1976. Band written, band produced. It is a hard rock. There you go. Show those props, boys. It is a hard rock mecca. And I'm going to use the mecca. Cockroach. Heavy, quirky,
And that's-
grinding riff, oddball lyrics What a bizarre song, but man, is it heavy. The Lies in Your Eyes, a great opener.
Oh, fantastic.
Harmonies, great track. Keep It In, I'm not sure what that means. Not sure.
We can
I
guess.
will not
So
venture to
it's got-
guess.
the instrumentation on this, I must say, is tight. It's great stuff. 4th of
They're
July is great.
smoking on this album.
Action, another track with a heavy riff, little bit of synth on it. It's sweet, ladies and gentlemen. I almost look at this records like this is sweet in their most pure form.
Yeah,
If you
I
can
agree.
imagine it, because no one's really telling them what to do.
That's
They
right.
are doing exactly what they want to do.
yeah.
They're
White
balls
Mice is
out.
great. Balls to the wall.
Balls to the wall, balls out. Yeah.
That too. So that's my number 3. So there you go. We're getting up on this list. Now let's go to our top 2. I'm going to throw it over to Jay. Jay,
All right,
give
I'll
us
make
your top
these.
2.
I'll make these quick. I don't want to eat up all your time.
Well, I
all
got to
right.
keep the show moving, ladies and
I
gentlemen.
know,
And
bro.
that's
We've
what
got
I
places
do.
to go.
I know.
I got
I'm a
places to
virgin
go.
at this with y'all. So, but anyway, all right. So my number 2 is going to be "Give Us a Wink." Like you said, first fully autonomous, sweet record, proven that they were not only capable of padding a Chin Chapman production with a few cool album cuts, but they were actually able to make their own records in their entirety. It's the heaviest of Sweet's albums. The Lies in Your Eyes kind of takes some cues from Fox on the Run. I think when Andy started messing around with the Moog synthesizer, that suddenly became a prominent part of a lot of the stuff that they did
Yes.
after.
Yes.
And so that's an excellent, and I think that was actually one of the singles, and an excellent choice for a single. Cockroach, like you said, it's got a great mid-pace stomp to it. It's just this nastiness. Mixed drums sound like a piano being thrown down a staircase. It's just got this just loud, cacophonous thud that you just can't find in a lot of songs that were popular at the time. But I would like to know what having a mouth like a VC10 means. I have no idea what
You know what that means.
Yes.
I do. I guess I'm missing the subtleties there, but I have no idea. But anyway,
They're not very subtle with some of their stuff.
They're not subtle like Kisses with their lyrics.
yeah.
Yeah. Plastic.
4th of July, freaking great. I actually love the piano mix of this song, which you can find on a couple other of their compilations because it's a little more prominent. Excellent song. Action, as you said, is I think the quintessential Sweet single. I think it was really a vindication for them with this single doing so well because it takes cues from a lot of the stuff they did when Chin and Chapman were still sort of prominent in their sphere. And so it's an excellent song. White Mice. Now this one here, I just want to mention real quick because I don't know if you all have noticed, but it takes a lot of cues from Burn on the Flame. If you listen to those two songs side by side, there's almost an identical structure to those two songs. So normally I have issues with bands that self-plagiarize and I will call them out, but both those songs are so badass, I will let it pass.
We get a pass from Jay on those. So if you're worried, we'll let it slide.
Yep, you're allowed to like it. And then I'll just say Healer. Normally a song like that would normally bore the crap out of me.
It's great.
7 minutes, and it's literally like 2 chords over and over and over again.
I still love it.
But it's got this like seductive, almost hypnotic quality to it that never wears its welcome out. It just, and then the clavinet that jumps in towards the end. Oh man, that's like the cherry on the top. So yeah, I'm a big lover of Give Us Some Wink for sure.
Yeah.
And my number 1 is going to be Sweet Fanny Adams. I think this album is the quintessential Sweet album. It's actually, oddly enough, it only had 1 single, which you mentioned earlier. Actually, I mentioned earlier the cover, Peppermint Twist.
Peppermint
Twist. Only single.
Joey
that's the only album cut that was released as a single. But to me, it's the perfect mixture of the glammy bubblegum that did serve them so well in the earlier part of the 70s, and then the hard rock stuff that they would end up, sort of developing over time after that. Set Me Free, best Sweet album opener, hands down.
Yes.
Just killer. Mick and Handy are seriously on fire on this one. Another great one is Rebel Rouser. Now, this one here is peculiar because for the longest time, I just assumed that it was another Chin Chapman song because it follows that template. But it's actually a band original, which, is really kind of striking. They do a super convincing job of kind of capturing that Chin Chapman glammy single kind of vibe. It's great. I love it. Sweet FA. I'm just going to say I love the song. It's not particularly catchy, but it's just got attitude all day long.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure about some of the questionable lyrics. There's some stuff in there that makes me kind of go, what? But, for 1973, 74, hey, you got to give it a pass. And then I'll just say in closing, AC/DC. It's a super fun song. It's a campy romp. It's hard not to love. I mean, it's, the same old story. Dude's got a girlfriend. He's got a girlfriend. And
he's got a girlfriend.
And if you take the lyrics at face value, she's apparently got a ding-a-ling too. But hey, man, I don't judge.
I don't know
how this one got past the censors. I'll never know, but I'm damn glad it did. So I think this one's the grand poobah of the Sweet catalog. And I couldn't love it anymore. It's just, to me, the perfect Sweet album. And so I give this one my number one spot.
Number one with a bullet. All right. Thank you, Jay. Let's go throw it over to Ashley to get his top two.
Okay. Well, my next two, they could change on any day because I found this task very, very hard. I mean, I could do a top 10 and rave about all of them. But today, my number two is going to be the birthday present I got for my 7th birthday, and that's Desolation Boulevard. Great album from start to finish. One of my personal favourites. Starts off with the 16s. That's a great track. That was released as a single here in Australia as well. Did quite well. Got in the top 20. Very good. Solid Gold Brass. This is a great track as well. Real deep album, Carter Bears. Gets a bit of heavy in there and goes on a little bit of a proggy feel in the middle as well. That's quite good. Turn It Down. This is a good one. This is one of the heavier tracks on the album. Was banned from the BBC because they had to say, for God's sakes, turn it down. And they banned it because of that.
Wow.
That's crazy. They can talk about AC/DC, but you don't mention for God's sake, and it might get censored. That's just odd.
No. Was Turn It Down, but was that a single? Did
it was.
Yeah, I think it was.
That's why.
Yes. And you have Medusa, which is a great track as well. That's really good. And then you get the Andy Scott Pam ballad, Lady Starlight. And that was released here in Australia as a single as well. But very hard to find out in the wild. And also it contains the album version of Fox on the Run. Very important album for that. Although this version on album is different than the single, as they reworked it for a single release. So yeah, to wrap it all up, that's my number two is Desolation Boulevard.
Can't argue with that.
And my number one for today will be Give Us a Wink.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Look at this. Look at the visual.
You got to love those.
Ashley spared he spared no expense.
Yeah.
Oh, no, not today.
His
no.
visuals.
No. Side one kicks off with The Lies in Your Eyes. Classic track indeed. It was top 10 hit here in Australia in 1976. Really good. And The Cockroach, this is the second track, and that was actually the B-side to the single. That's another good track. Keep It In, as it's already been mentioned there. That's a great track. And 4th of July. Now, believe it or not, that was the third single release here in Australia off this album.
Right.
And I'm not sure that it was released anywhere else. I don't think it was. No,
it wasn't. That was
Did you get in? Well, Ashley, go ahead. I have a question.
Yeah, very hard to find in the wild, that single. Very hard to find. It did absolutely nothing. But
What did you guys get in Australia as far as track listing? Did it duplicate the UK track listing or
okay,
the
I'm
American?
not
What
sure.
did you guys
I
end
think
up having down
I
there?
think it might be the same as the UK.
Okay.
Side one, you have the lies in your eyes, cockroach,
Mhm.
keep it in 4th of July,
Yeah.
and then side two, the classic action.
Yeah.
And that was another top 10 hit single in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, you get Yesterday's Rain. That's another great track.
Excellent
And
song.
White Mice has already been mentioned. Is great. And my personal favourite track on the last song too is Healer. This is absolutely killer. Really good. Really good. And you can also see, when you listen to Healer, you also can understand where Windy City came from, because it's sort of got that same vibe,
Yep.
which it
Agreed.
stretches out a bit as well. So, yeah, for today, my number one is Give Us a Wink.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Again, I can't argue with that. Yeah, my ranking. You ask me next week, my ranking might be a bit different. Probably the whole panel. It could fluctuate. It just you're getting
yes,
us
sir.
today, but
Mhm.
it's not so much about the ranking. It's about turning you on to the band and these records. So maybe if you don't know Sweet, you can look at any of these ones that we're starting out with. You might want to start there. Anyway, let's throw it over to Mr. Webb. Webb, you're up.
Okay, so number 2, Off the Record. I love this one. I love Off the Record. I know it was higher for you guys, but I think they're on fire on this. They're riding the momentum from Give Us a Wink. I feel like Andy and Mick are just peaking on this album. It's wow. I was just blasting it in the car. I could go between this and Give Us a Wink of 1 and 2. I wrote Midnight Daylight, Live for Today, She Give Me Lovin', or Balls to the Wall, Balls Out, however you want to say it. This classic Sweet style. Windy City, of course, with the Woman from Tokyo riff, but who cares? I mean, it's just, I think it's just unbelievable.
It's
The
awesome.
guitar is sizzling guitar. How about that? Sizzling.
Yeah.
I don't mind the acoustic Laura Lee. I think when it kicks in for the little fade out, I'm a sucker for that. I like it. I mean, building up to it, yeah, but when it kicks in for that little outro, I like it. I wrote that Hard Times is a riff that Jimmy Page wished he'd written in 1977. Yeah, I mean, I think they're showing off here. They're so good. The syncopated riffs, how they're just so in time. Mick does it. They're so in sync. Sweet's like one of the best bands ever at doing that. I think I love it. Okay, Yesterday's Rain. Is Yesterday's Rain on? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so they go crazy in that, and they do. I think it kind of sounds like, I don't know, it kind of has a Deep Purple kind of upbeat thing going. So does White Mice too. And I have to mention this because I'm a drummer and I keep up with this crap. In White Mice, they go into a section of 9/8. They alternate between 9 and 8. So they 5/4, 4/4, 5/4, 4. And listen to it, you'll hear that extra beat at the end. I mean, who does that? Not many people do that. Proggers do it all the time. Hard rock guys, not much. So kudos for them on that, to do that. And that's it for that one. Number 1, you know what it's going to be. Give Us a Wink.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like they were saying to the world, okay, here's what we are. They started on Sweet Fanny Adams and did really well with it, but then Give Us a Wink, we're doing it ourselves. We're producing it. Hello World, Hello Sweet. Their signature sound is on this. They're confident, they're cocky. I feel like they know how good they are. I mean, they know it. And okay, real quick about Cockroach. And I read this. I don't know where I read it. Bonham heard it. He heard the drum, because this came out before Presence. He heard that sound. He said, "Holy shit. I want my drums to sound like that." Well, guess what? It was in Musicland in Germany. They recorded Presence, their next album.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that was my cool fact, my cool drummer fact about that. And like Nobody's Fault But Mine drums sound kind of like Cockroach drums. Just the production of it and the sound of it. So I think Zeppelin was probably impressed with Sweet. I think Sweet could have. I bet they were blowing people off the stage during this. 74,
Just go on.
70.
just go on YouTube and look at some of those shows from that era.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
These guys were absolutely on fire as
I know.
players.
Yeah.
Who could keep up with them? I mean, that music, the music laden or what, the one from 70, that's 74.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. That's awesome.
Classic.
But that's
excellent.
before Give Us a Wink
Yeah.
and Off the Record and everything. But I mean, they're just kicking at, I mean, you just had to stare at them. I mean, you were probably just, people were just like, what in the F am I seeing? You know, I mean,
That's like
I
they
just-
landed on the planet and just like, where did this come from?
right.
You know?
And I just, I mean, just the way they sound. I don't know any other bands that sound like this with the, and then like you said, they, you know, there's a lot of phaser on some of those records, especially
Yeah,
on, I mean,
It's cool.
it's cool though, and they just had that. I mean, you know, it's sweet. You know, it's Mick Tucker drumming. You know, it's Andy Scott's solos just kill me. And nobody mentions Steve Priest's bass, but I mean, he's there. Come on,
He's
he's there.
fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, they were top shelf. They were top shelf musicians, and I enjoyed this homework because honestly, I didn't know Sweet Fanny Adams very well. Of course, I knew. I mean, Desolation Boulevard, I would have put it number 2 if it, if I could do the comp. But
Yeah.
that I had these are the only 3 I have. So I knew Level Headed, but I never listened to the other stuff, and I love doing this. So
Well, hopefully we've turned Webb on.
you
Yeah,
turned me on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I'll agree with you. I mean, I know all these songs backward and forward, but hearing them again, all kind of together over the last week, has made me kind of reassess my appreciation for the band. I've always loved them, but I have a newfound appreciation for the musicianship and the songwriting, and they have a distinct sound that is entirely their own. I mean, they took some cues from Queen, maybe,
Or Queen
Well,
took some
vocally.
cues from them.
Right from
I
there.
agree.
or
Grant.
perhaps,
Yeah.
I mean, they were
I agree,
certainly
Grant.
close.
I think that, there is a little bit of
But dude,
people gone
four-part
back and
harmonies,
forth.
I have absolutely no problem with that at all. So
But
You know,
but
give
their
it to me.
music is just, oh my God. I just don't know who was on fire as much as they were for that 3 or 4 year period. I don't know who could keep up with them.
Yeah.
I think they blew away Deep Purple at that time. I think they blew away Zeppelin. I think
Well, as
that,
far as players, I think they would.
yeah.
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 Grant, we got to hear yours.
All right, here's my top 2. Now, my number 2 is Desolation Boulevard, the UK album. I think that the US album, I know it's basically a comp of 2 records, like I said. I love the US comp because it takes the best out of Sweet Fanny Adams.
Absolutely.
Desolation. You don't have the album version of Fox on the Run. You have the single version, which the
Which
single
I
version
prefer.
is better
Yes,
than
I
the
think
album
so.
version. It's tighter, the production's better. It is one of the greatest singles of the 70s. And
Yeah.
you've got Ballroom Blitz, for God's sakes, which is another
Awesome
single.
sauce.
So the US Desolation Boulevard is great, but I'm going to go with the UK one because it's still great. Opens with 16s. Why is Sweet so good with sequencing and opening tracks? The 16s will tear your face off too.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about Set Me Free, which is incredible, but it grabs you right in the beginning and brings you into the record. Solid Gold Brass. Little swagger there. It's great.
Yeah, it does for sure.
Turn It Down. We got great riffs. Brian Conley sounds wonderful. Blah, blah, blah. Medusa, dark and slinky. It's seductive. It's great. Top notch. This is a great, sweet album. Now, next week I could put this at number 1, but I probably could put the US version. I do love that damn US version, but whatever.
I know. I wanted to rank it.
This is still a great record. Check out the UK version. It's kind of a different animal. My number 1, I'm going to go Sweet Fanny Adams. Now, if I'm looking in the dictionary and I look up the band Sweet, and I think what is the perfect Sweet album that would represent Sweet to the fullest, I'm like Jay. I'm going to go Sweet Fanny Adams. Set Me Free, one of the greatest rock heavy tracks of the entire 70s.
Totally.
Every time I hear it, I just go, holy shit, where did these guys come from?
Yes.
Give me another track. Sweet FA. Raw, great. It's just full of rock. We've mentioned AC/DC. That's another killer track.
No, you don't.
No,
What about
you
me?
don't. Aggressive, punchy. You've got
Totally.
Steve singing on that one is just freaking great. I don't really have to go into much more because you've already talked about how great it was. That's my number one. And literally, we're just trying to turn you on to some sweet.
Yes.
We did a show on my channel, gosh, a year ago with Martin and Reed Little, and we talked about the relevance of sweet, and that got a lot of views because here in the United States, now this may be controversial, but when we were talking about it, we were coming at it from the standpoint that sweet in the United States really is kind of forgotten to some degree, but in the UK, they're still well thought of. But here, man, not as well thought of. And really about these shows, we're just trying to turn you on to stuff and go out and check out some sweet. If you like, what's that? Which one's that?
Yeah, that's great.
This is the first single, 68 to 71. So this is all the stuff from the 60s, or their singles that they released in the UK.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to hear what they sound like back in the 60s in the early days with their bubblegum hits.
I do like the bubblegum stuff too.
I love the bubblegum stuff.
That didn't chart very well, but say check that album out as well. It's called First Single 6871. That's also released by Repertoire.
Yeah, and you get a lot of that on what's funny how Sweet Cocoa can be from 1971.
Yeah.
So it's very bubblegum, it's Chin and Chapman stuff, but there it is. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a little bit different. You've got, Sweet under that Chin Chapman umbrella. It's not like, Give Us a Wink where they're totally unleashed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, hopefully you've got enough there. There you go. What's that again?
This
Ashley,
is Strung Up. I'm not sure if this was released in the States.
75, I think.
European only.
Yeah, and basically this is one side of it's live from the Rainbow Show in 73, and the second side is a compilation.
Yeah.
Best of, double of them. That's another one worth checking out.
Cool. All right, boys. I've got another show. Please leave a comment down below in the comments. What's your top 5 sweet? Hell, give us your top 10 sweet. We want to hear it. We will check out the comments. We will, of course, my ranking's the only one that matters. But we do want to hear from you in the chat. Give us a thumbs up and please subscribe. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you for doing it. We've got Jay, we've got Ashley, we've got Webb. These gentlemen will be back. We'll probably talk, I don't know what. We'll do something. So,
beautiful.
All right, gentlemen, thanks for doing it. We'll see you on the next one. And as always, everybody, keep it clean.
Yes.
Bye, guys.
All right, we'll see you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Yeah.